can't go into new seasons with old cycles.
Right.
So in order for me to go into this new season of wifehood, because there's not many people in my family that are wives. So I didn't have the example of the women in my family being wives. That's why I knew something had to break. So I am so glad that I did not become a wife and a mom then.
This is good.
Because now God is using me as the conduit, even now in my early 40s, to now change the trajectory of my entire bloodline. So if it means that I have to wait, and if it means that it's weighty to do that, in order to shift the trajectory of my bloodline, I'll do it.
Wow. Hey everybody, Henry Fernandez here. You know what time it is. It is my podcast for the real ones. I'm really excited about, this podcast today, but before we get into it, I really want to thank those of you who consistently watch the podcast. I really appreciate it and hope that you will share the message that we put on the podcast from time to time with your family and your friends and your coworkers, because we are committed to making sure our Real Ones community find hope. Of course, we deal with several different topics, some of which are very controversial. You may even don't like our opinions and whatever. We ask that you comment. We don't care if it's you expressing yourself. We need to hear from you. This is a safe platform where you can be yourself. So I'm grateful that you're here today. As always, remember, we need your financial support. So if you can support this ministry, I really appreciate it. Information is right there on your screen. So be a supporter today. Well, I've got to tell you, this topic today, I'm excited about it. The weight of the weight. The 𝗴𝗃𝗃𝗀𝘃, how heavy it is on you of waiting. So I gotta warn you, if you're not ready for some straight up talk, this ain't the platform for you today. Because we have an amazing person who, by the way, she shut it down recently in the Dear Future Wifey podcast. But let me just introduce my co-host. Of course, to my right is Carleen Wright. Then we've got Frederick Custard here.
What's going on?
All right.
Henry.
So I got to watch him,
How you doing today, Henry?
I am fine, Frederick.
That's good.
Fine. How heavy is the weight?
Oh, I'm
don't say
trying
nothing
to,
yet.
okay.
Let's don't say nothing.
All right.
We got to start this show right. And then we have got the one and only Ashaala Shanae.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
How are you?
I'm blessed and highly favored.
Okay.
I know that sounds a little cliche, but I really am blessed and highly favored. And
That's good.
I'm just so grateful to be here.
Now,
Yeah.
everybody know who you are, but maybe some of my real ones really don't know what you do. A little bit of your resume. For 20 years, you're a professional, coach in the area of the music, songwriter, producer. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah. So born in Brooklyn, New York. Shout out to those from New York, but raised in the British Virgin Islands. Shout out to Tortola. And I am a product of just the soil, but I'm also the product of music. And so because of that, my career now today stems around culture and creativity and also public speaking. So I am the CEO of Vocal Wall Street. I actually help high-level speakers and singers learn how to first maintain and manage their voice asset and then turn it into a wealth-generating asset by learning how to monetize it. I've been a professional for about 20 years. I'm also a mental health advocate. I am a creative business mentor, and I'm also a 2-time TEDx speaker.
Okay,
So,
that's a whole lot right there.
That was quite a mouthful.
And when you were a part of the Dear Future Wifey podcast that, I was a part of also,
Yeah.
you said something that struck me. You said you are a 7-figure
Yeah.
earning woman.
Let's go.
So I really want the people watching the podcast to hear that. Not 6 figures.
No.
7 figures. So you're doing well,
Yes.
right? Successful.
Yeah.
And you attended the Dear Future Wifey podcast as one of the people on stage, on the panel, and so forth. And you told the whole world that you're single.
Yeah, single.
You're
Double.
single. You're single.
Yeah.
Right? You have no ring on your finger.
Not at all.
One pendant.
Explain that to me,
Yeah.
Shayla. How is a 7-figure woman, attractive as you are,
Thank you, Henry.
without some guys knocking at your door? Let me in.
Let me
I wanna-
in. Let me in. Knock,
Oh, it's
knock.
gonna be this type of podcast today. Okay.
I mean, let's just straight up. How
Listen.
comes
Anybody
they're not? Let me.
It's crickets
in.
out here in these dating
Yeah.
streets. I don't know what's going on. I think I shared a little bit on the podcast actually about the intimidation that I hear people are intimidated all the time. And for me, I've just never been one of those women to be like, I don't need a man. I'm
Right.
independent. I make this money. I don't need. No, I need a man. And really, I do need a purpose partner and a husband.
Right.
So for me, I believe that it is intentional that I am single in this season, not because of the fact that I'm not ready for marriage. I think God is literally has had me in the last, I would say 6 months or so, like Esther, dipped in fragrance and preparing for my king.
So you smell good.
Yeah, I smell good in character. Hello, somebody.
But then the
months.
wait, though, I mean,
Jesus.
you've been waiting a long time, and I still
Long time.
forgive me if I'm old school or whatever. 7 figures,
Yes.
attractive, decent woman,
Yes.
can articulate well.
Yes.
Something ain't mathin'.
My
The
God.
math ain't mathin'.
Brothers, let me talk to y'all.
Ooh.
What's wrong with you all?
Yo.
Something-
And she smell good 6 months? What's the issue?
You
I
know,
mean, come on.
you said something that's so important. You said that you are looking for a purpose partner.
Yeah.
Here we go again. Now I know it. Oh, gee. I've been dealing with this a long time on this podcast. Go ahead.
So I feel like my sister is saying, like, you are not settling and that
Yes.
you have had opportunities, but may have not been what was a perfect match. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
See?
Oh.
goodness.
Yeah. You see the divide. You see the dividing line.
We're
There's a
dialoguing
wall right
on
here.
Yes.
So here's the thing. Majority of the relationships that I have been in were with men of God. All right. I shared the last person that I was in a relationship with was a pastor. However, what I'm learning is that if you have two people come together and they themselves have not gone through complete healing, right, to deal with their own unmet emotional needs or traumas, and you can't force another person to do it. You can only work on yourself and self-correct and allow Holy Spirit to work on you. So because of that, it hasn't been like I'm just out here in these streets. Now, I've been in long-term relationships, but also, too, as my sister just said, I found self-love to the point where I refuse to settle. And the truth of the matter is, for every one man out here,
Yeah.
there are about 78 women who are willing to give them the milk without purchasing the cow itself. So because of that, this woman over here can clean for him. This woman over here can wash his clothes. This woman over here can give him massages. This woman over here can rub his feet. And so there's all these connections with no commitments and no covenant.
So he can get in the cow.
Yeah. No, I'm not doing any more connections without covenant. We're not doing that anymore.
Wow. So help me to understand this, though. You mentioned that you're not going to settle. That's a heavyweight.
It is.
That's a heavyweight. So what happens if you never find that person
Yeah.
who is willing to measure up to your standard? Are you willing to go back to God as a eunuch?
Ooh.
Why you got to say that word?
You know, I
he
mean,
went-
come on.
A eunuch?
Conversation.
A unit.
Okay. So that's a heavy question, and I'm gonna give you the real, respectfully,
Yeah.
right? Last year was very tough for me with that question because for a whole year I didn't go into my prayer closet because I was disappointed that God did not answer my prayer in finding a husband last year, and I realized that I had made it an idol. So because of that, it's no longer my list. I'm really going based on what God is saying at this point. This year, I've been intentional of hearing his will
Wow.
and sensing his will,
good.
which means then it's really not my list. My settling has nothing to do with looks, money. No. My settling is, what is his character like? Can he lead me?
God's
Can
man.
he cover me? God's man for me. So because of that, I can't settle because I'm his. And that's kind of hard because lots of times it's really, even in the church, hard to really find that type of man. And so I think it's a deeper question of where are all the men that actually now can align to God's will for his daughters.
You're definitely speaking on behalf of a lot of women, single women. And so your voice is needed, by the way.
Thank you.
You know, you're giving them hope. When you were on the Dear Future Wifey podcast, you said some very interesting things. And I want the Real Ones community to really hear what she said recently at the Dear Future Wifey podcast. Let's take a look at this.
So you have no idea that while you're beating up on that guy and you think he doesn't have potential, one man's trash.
Okay,
Another
but
man's
Bishop,
treasure.
there's layers to that. Ladies, I feel you. Can we keep it real? Can we keep it real?
Yes,
Can we
yes.
keep it real, Bishop?
Yes.
Whew.
Go ahead.
Whew, I felt this one. I hear you. But because the man is unhealed, he cannot see a woman that comes to him and say, I want to do that. Because I'll say this, a young man or a man, I would just say, the strength that he sees in his mom will be the same strength that he resents in his woman. Because he thinks that she's controlling him. And lots of times, no, we're not trying to save you. We don't want to heal. We're not trying to do that. We're really just trying to support you. But if a man is unhealed from his own traumas, sometimes all he can see is through that trauma, Bishop, that sometimes he can't see that we are really here to help. And then here's what happens. The unhealed version of him wounds the woman. And we are the ones. That's what, ladies, I got you. Bishop, we understand what you're saying. Guys, we understand what you're saying. Marcus, don't you drop that mic. Don't drop that mic, Marcus. But Bishop, and Lateris, CB, and Marcus, hear my heart out and hear our heart out. There are a lot of us in here who was down for the man. And we are now seeing him treat a whole nother woman amazing when we were there and he wounded. Well, he may not have wounded us, but he was so wounded that he bled on us and made us believe that we were wounded. You understand?
As a single woman, I talk about this all the time about how when women go to their doctor, they're like, hey, do you want to have kids? And when you're trying to do stuff the right way and honor God, then you're not just trying to, be a baby mama, quote unquote. You want to be a wife and get married or whatnot, but y'all are facing some real stuff that I don't think men are sensitive about this enough. And so I brought her on here because I wanted her to unpack this conversation that we had. What was that conversation like, Ashaala?
So I was in a 5-year relationship and no sex before marriage. We were doing the godly thing. By year 3, I'm like, okay, he's not asking me to marry him. What's going on? And so I would say in that 3rd, going to 4th year, I decided to reserve some eggs. I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to, it's my childbearing years, and I'm still in my childbearing years, but I'm like, I don't really know what's going on with this guy. And for me, I'm like, God, like Dr. Tracy, I'm very much like, hey, like, God, this is a sign that I need, and if he doesn't come through by this time, we're not doing this anymore. I was in therapy one day, and there was this overwhelming shame that came over me, because for a woman like myself, and I don't boast this to say this, but as a high-earning woman, I get a lot of the stigma that comes on me that's like, what's wrong with you? You don't have any kids? You make 7 figures? You don't have a man? You must be crazy. Oh, you one of them kind of women that's independent. Oh, you kind of one of them women that don't want to have kids. I have never said any of those things a day in my life.
Yeah.
And being a black woman, that is a high-earning woman, I get it the worst from black men.
Yeah.
And it has hurt me so much to the point that there was this underlying shame that came over me that I was afraid to tell a man what I did because I didn't want to be judged. I was afraid to even have a conversation if I was dating someone outside of that relationship about children and reserving eggs. The last guy that I spoke to in regards to that, he was like, well, what's wrong with you? You can't have kids? And I was like, no, I can't. I just decided to. Is this real for somebody? Am I talking to anybody out here? Yeah. But do you know how many women that are in their 30s and in their early 40s that desire to have children? And they have, my family has put this pressure on me. I hate going to family gatherings. I don't like going to Thanksgiving. I don't like going to Christmas dinners because it's always, she is successful in everything else in life, but she ain't got no man and she have no kids. And that's why I had to go to therapy, because I had to even learn how to navigate through the pressures of me being a woman without having to put that stigma on me, even though I desire to be a wife and I desire to be a mother. I always believe in the law of reaping and sowing, right? And so I believe that in order for God to water something, you have to sow a seed. We can't ask God to bless us in places and he's like, well, where's the seed? I can't water empty ground. So because of that, I have spent money in mentorship for my career. I've spent money for training, for working out, but I had never sowed a seed in becoming a wife.
Woo.
Shayla,
Wait a minute.
we're still trying to clean up from
That bomb that was
that bomb that was dropped. So there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And my, two co-hosts will jump in here. It's even become a part of the election cycle, and period this year.
It is.
So many people believe that even as Christians, there's something wrong with a woman choosing to freeze her eggs. And the reason why I asked the question before the video, because there's a lot of women who are experiencing what you're experiencing. Very successful, making money, believe in themselves, holding on to their principles, not going to give the cow away, but they're waiting. That's a wait, man. That's like, but the guy's not coming. I'm not going to compromise, but they want a family. They want a seed to be left on the earth before they die. So here is this 7-figure woman. You have the resources to do it. Let's talk first. Is it spiritually wrong to do that? Because, hey, the Bible says, people say, therefore shall a man and woman come together, man leave his mother and father, cleave together as one. And the historical action of family starts when a man and a woman goes to bed and,
Yeah.
They start
you're
clapping.
doing it. You're doing something different.
I don't think it's spiritually wrong. I really don't. So I need to clarify a little bit. Me freezing my eggs wasn't because I wanted to go and have children outside of the confines of marriage.
Okay, right.
I froze my eggs as a form of family planning for my husband and I.
So we got that. Good.
Exactly. So I just want to clarify that. Why? And the reason is because it is true. We are finding more men are waiting later in life to have children. They want to focus on their careers. They want to focus on making sure they're financially stable.
And our clock don't run out.
And your clocks don't really run out, even though the libido changes.
Right.
But you can still have children
engine just slows.
all the way up into your 70s, right? 80s sometimes. But for a woman, that's not necessarily the case. And what happens is there's a lot of women too. We see that 400%, that's the percentage that's up for women, especially Black women, in careers and entrepreneurship and having degrees and stuff like that. So a lot of women are waiting later in life to have children as well. One of the challenges that I had, and I heard this from a Christian gentleman who is very well known, I'm not going to say his name, who's in his late 30s, early 40s, says, we will not date women our age. We rather date women that are younger, because we know that we'll be able to have families. Can you imagine all of us that are women in waiting
There you go. There you
that
go.
are just like, but we may be suitable for you as spouses, but because you have already put the stigma on us
There you go.
that we can't have children because we are
It's
in
so
our early
unfair.
40s,
And
it's
it's unfair.
unfair. And so for me, the reason why I decided to reserve, it's not that I can still have kids,
Right.
but the reason why I reserved eggs was because as women get into their 30s and 40s,
Right.
Down syndrome becomes even more higher when it comes to having children. So it doesn't mean that my child would have Down syndrome
Right.
or my children.
Possibility.
But one of the things happens is if my husband and I decide to have children, we can decide and say, well, do we want to do it naturally, or do we want to use one of my eggs with his sperm, bring it together to reduce Down syndrome? So there's a lot of things that are there. So that's the reason why when I made the decision, it wasn't because I was impatient. It was because I was looking at everything ahead of me and saying, I do want to have children. I know that there's a man of God out there that does not have, and there's a lot of men who don't mind going that route.
Right.
Family planning that way. As a matter of fact, the Obamas did it. And a lot of people don't even realize that both of their children came as a result of IVF.
Wow.
Not with anybody else's egg and sperm. It was their own.
Wow.
They conceived outside and then they put the egg with the sperm back into her body to
Didn't know that.
have her children.
that.
Yeah, it's in her book.
Right.
So because of that, there's so many women that are out here doing it. And that's the reason why I don't believe that it's spiritually wrong. It would be spiritually wrong if God told you to do something different and you disobeyed.
Right. And get ready to ask your question because I know you're fired up, but I have to say this.
Yeah.
Because, I think what you just did in the short response
Yeah.
you gave, if you've really helped to educate, especially the body of Christ,
Yeah.
in how sometimes we can limit our thinking. Times have changed. The word of God is still the same.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the form of carrying the gospel back then in the Bible days. People would walk on foot or in animals and take months and days to travel with the message.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now, we could still do that today. I mean, we could still get on donkeys, horses, and try to, if you're going to Atlanta.
I don't know if I'm going on a donkey.
Just think about it. We could do
Yeah,
that. It's
yeah.
doable. It still can work.
Yeah.
But it's that efficient today.
Yeah.
You get on a plane. We use social media.
Yep.
We can have a greater audience. Here's the point of what I'm saying is that just like how you were able to do that, that's family planning.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with it. And I think people need to embrace the fact that, especially, I was more concerned, as you rightly said, a woman who's start reaching a certain age. History shows that at a certain time, you're not going to be able to even get pregnant. So what if you become 50 and finally found the man of your dream,
That's real.
but you wanted a family?
That's real.
It's not possible anymore. But what you did now makes it all possible. So
Exactly.
thank you for clearing that up.
Exactly, because there's women even now in their 50s who've done that and they can now still have children. They are financially able to do it. They can still carry kids.
Yeah.
All right. And we find a lot of career women. And for me, not having kids really has nothing to do with my career. The reason why I don't have children today is because I wanted to do it in the confines of marriage.
Yeah.
Right.
I could have had kids a long
we
time
honor you
ago.
for that.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure that because I was raised in a single parent home, I did not want my children to be raised in a single parent home. And that's the reason why the weight of the weight has been weighty.
I love it.
Because of having standards and say, no, I still believe in God's way, right? I still believe in the sanctity of marriage. I still believe in honoring that, and so because of that, it looks very different now, and it's tough.
Wonderful. Carly?
Yes, I commend you, for doing that.
Thank
That
you.
is great planning. And as you talked about the fact that it gets, the percentage gets less as you get older, here are some stats, because by age 40, the chance of getting pregnant in any month cycle is about 5%.
5%.
At age 40.
In the 40s, 5%.
I didn't know that.
So you mentioned 50.
Yeah, see,
know,
I'm a man. I
it
don't
goes
know.
even
I don't have
It
a
even
clock.
lessens-
I'm just. seeing
it even
what is.
lessens at that point. So
Right.
making
Wow.
that step to do that much of a strategic plan, and I think
Wow.
it's definitely brilliant. And as I thought about it, in the church, it's not something that we really talk about.
Absolutely, yeah, very true.
Infertility, and there are a lot of single women, men and married couples who are going through that and are trying to figure out, what do I do? And I think they may not want to go down that road because they're thinking, is it right? You know,
Right.
would God agree with this? But I look at it like this. If you have a heart problem and you get a pacemaker, right? Advancement. So we're thankful for that advancement.
Yes.
God is doing it through the pacemaker. Hallelujah. The
Right.
same way he is doing it through the IVF.
Right,
You
right.
know, to be able to help the family.
Right.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that it is a burden being a seven-figure earner when it comes to finding relationships and with men?
Ooh, it
Instead of a
depends on how I
blessing.
look at it.
Okay.
So through my selfishness, yes, it was a burden. That's why I said last year I was going through this season of despondency, and I did not want to even go into my prayer closet to pray because it was me idolizing, like, why doesn't I was putting so much pressure on me, so it became a burden. But once I laid it on the altar and realized it really had to go back to my relationship with God. Now, this is not every woman's journey. This is Ashaala Shanae. God said to me, and even if you never have kids, would you still trust me and would you still serve me? That set the tone for me to, well, it's bigger than just having children. And I think a lot of it, just to answer your question, comes because of my upbringing.
Yeah.
I came from a West Indian old school home.
Okay.
So for me, the definition of womanhood is wife and children.
Right.
So now I've had to learn who I am as a woman outside of that,
Yeah.
and realize, wait a minute, that does not determine if I'm a woman or not.
Absolutely.
And the reason why I say that is because let's flip it. I know of women that refuse to have a hysterectomy because they felt that if they took their womb out, they were no longer a woman, even after having children.
Wow.
And because of that, we have to break down a lot of stigmas. Once we break those things down, it will no longer be a burden.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
Yeah.
The weight
There's
is
a
gone.
lot of conversation we
Yeah,
need to
the weight
have.
is gone. Right. So let me ask you then, how do you manage loneliness? like, you know, I mean, yeah, you're successful. You go out there and you make all the money. You're coming home, you get a nice check, man. Money's going in the bank, and
Yeah.
you look at your balance sheet at the end of the month, maybe
Yeah.
$200,000 is in there. You know, wonderful, you're doing great.
Yeah.
But every night you got to go and open the door to your fancy condo,
Yeah, it is
apartment.
fancy.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that loneliness.
Oh, it's a struggle.
The struggle.
The struggle's real.
Because,
Yeah.
you know, you're a woman, and as much as you're saving, you talk about your prayer closet, you need
So you
10
want-
hands
Yeah.
to hug you.
Oh
So
my.
she was out for a whole year.
Right.
Out from the prayer closet. So she was still
There you go,
lonely.
right.
So I'm like,
I was.
So
How do you handle that?
No, it's for anyone to say that they don't feel any type of level of loneliness as a single person desiring companionship. Well, you can get a dog for companionship, but desiring marriage and desiring to be with someone, it's a lie. It's been a constant challenge between talking down loneliness and saying I may be alone, but I'm not lonely. Right? Because there's a difference between loneliness and aloneness. And so for me, one of the things that I have to do is I have to be proactive when that emotion comes about. Like even after this, I'm going to go hang out with some of my friends.
Yeah.
Because that is something proactive that I can do. I know me. I know what I can trust myself with, and I know the emotions that if I don't be proactive, the enemy can have a playing field with me. So because of that, I've had to learn now through therapy as well, because sometimes loneliness comes as a result of other unmet emotional needs. So I had to go back to saying, okay, well, abandonment, right? Rejection, some of these things that I've dealt with in my childhood as to why am I feeling lonely, or have I not learned how to get language to what it feels like to be alone, and to understand that you don't have to be lonely in the midst of being alone. It's an everyday thing, and I have to be proactive. It's the same thing as a person that may have like a porn addiction or may want to go to masturbating or something like that, right? You have to become proactive in what you can trust yourself with and what you can't trust yourself with. I know people right now that can't trust themselves with being alone. Because they understand that being alone, they misinterpret it as loneliness, and then they go to their Rolodex.
you better believe it.
You understand? That black book opens up.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
because of that, it's for anyone to say that that's not a challenge. I just choose not to struggle with it, even though I'm challenged by it.
Okay. So how is it then I got to go back. 7
Yeah.
figures, all of those things
Yeah.
there. We dealt with the loneliness.
Yeah.
Okay, you articulated that very well. But you said something a moment ago that
Yeah.
triggered something that I really have to ask, and I think a lot of people watching now will be able to, leaning into
Yeah.
what are you going to say about this? If you've got it going on for you,
Yeah.
why therapy?
Oh, because
Especially you're a Christian.
No, I was a broken little girl.
Okay,
No,
but you're
no.
saved. You're in Christ. You sound like somebody got a special prayer closet at your house.
What's saved got to do with it?
Why would you
Yeah.
read your Bible
Yeah.
and pray,
Yeah.
go to church, and that should be enough to say you're going to therapy? It's like going to the psychic reader. You know,
Well, that's like saying well, I'm not going to say that on the podcast, but that's like saying I have a heart condition, but I'd never go and see a cardiologist, right? Because I already have a heart and I know what to do. I just take a little a tablet to thin the blood out so I don't get a heart attack. That's foolish.
Right.
And I believe in dual frequency. So I believe that just as how Jesus was the Son of Man, he came here, he also was a carpenter. He served purpose. And it's the same thing here. There are people on this earth that are used as God's hug for us so that our souls can prosper. And for me, I realized that spiritually, I can be so spiritually minded, but no earthly good.
right.
So I would have been no earthly good to a spouse. I don't care how spiritually minded. I don't know how much I care, how much I pray. But I was no earthly good. And so because of that, I realized that I had to go and seek someone out for the areas of my life that I could not interpret.
Very good. Because therapy is needed, especially in the church.
Must,
Yes.
especially in the body of Christ.
Wow. Carly?
So-
I think
Oh, go ahead, Carlene. Go ahead.
No, I'm hearing you, and you're at a really good place, because there's so many cultural pressures with being single and everything that we've mentioned so far. And then what I feel like it pushes people to make hasty decisions to get into relationships that they have no business in, but because of those cultural pressures, what mom is saying, what people may say in the church, and then for themselves too, loneliness, different emotions, they're like, you know what, let me just date this guy.
Yeah.
And then now comes the trauma after
Yeah.
that, having to deal with all of that.
Yeah.
That's something that I think is quite prevalent. So for
Yeah.
you to be where you are now, I think you're at a really good place. But a lot of women, you're still in that other place, that
Right.
messy middle, trying to,
Yeah.
to get to that place. So I think you're giving some really good tips on things that you did to
Well, let me just say this too. I need to give some context, all right? No one has arrived. Sanctification is a process. So every single day, I still have to choose spirit over flesh every single day. Let me give a little context to why you say 7 figures. That doesn't even impress me anymore, because I realize that, as I said it on the podcast, you can be so wealthy with financial things and still character and spiritually bankrupt. So for me, I realized that it looked good and it was shiny on the outside, but internally there were things that I needed to navigate. Like, for example, my father being a heroin addict, right? And being incarcerated most of my life, which means I had daddy issues, which means that I was dating the same man, looking to be healed from that man, because I really needed to heal the relationship between me and my dad, right? My mom is a recovering alcoholic, which means I had mommy issues, right? Which means that I did not want to be mentored by women, because the woman that was supposed to love me disappointed me. So because of that, the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying and where I'm at today, I am so glad that I wasn't married in my 20s.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I wasn't married in my early 30s.
Not a lot of women would say what you just said, that, because the idea is when they get in their 20s, I want that
was
white dress. I want to walk down the aisle. I want to have this big elaborate wedding. And for you to say, it takes a level of wisdom and maturity that you couldn't and should not have gotten married at a certain age because you weren't prepared for it.
I would have been irresponsible as a wife. And not only that, the cycle would have continued in my children. And right now, the new cycle, you can't go into new seasons with old cycles.
Right.
So in order for me to go into this new season of wifehood, because there's not many people in my family that are wives. So I didn't have the example of the women in my family being wives. That's why I knew something had to break. So I am so glad that I did not become a wife and a mom then.
This is good.
Because now God is using me as the conduit, even now in my early 40s, to now change the trajectory of my entire bloodline. So if it means that I have to wait, and if it means that it's weighty to do that in order to shift the trajectory of my bloodline, I'll do it.
Wow. See, this is the message.
Come on. Come on.
Society need to hear.
Come on.
Especially women.
Yes.
You know, most of the people watch my podcast are females. And what you just said is a mouthful, because a lot of them are like you. They're not waiting on a man to give them this elaborate life. They're hustling by themselves. They are working hard. They're doing things, and they're sincere. And then, like in the video at the Dear Future Wifey podcast, you talked about, you know, the man, that unhealed man. You know, a lot of women are not going to compromise and sacrifice, you know, their future to be with an unhealed man. And for you to say that you are comfortable at your age, you know, to bear the weight of the waiting, and that you couldn't get married at an early age, that you own up to it. You wanted to be the best version of yourself, and it's still a work in progress. Ashaala, that's the message. I'm telling you, maybe I'm prophetically speaking. That's what you need to be telling this society today. Because they need to know that, because a lot of women they're frustrated right now. They're lonely at home, and sometimes they're bitter towards the unhealed man. Because nobody's asking them, or if the dude does ask them, he turns out to be, you know, a cousin to Lucifer, you know, and so forth. So thank you. Thank you for
You're welcome.
It is needed, because I know that's why I'm pulling on you, because it's heavy. I know, you know, we married people, we don't understand half the stuff you guys go through, but it's heavy.
It is. And let me just say this too, as you were talking. A woman will only be bitter to an unhealed man if she is unhealed. And the reason why I say that is because the woman that is actually at home, and I could relate to this, and that's why I'm saying it now, the woman that is at home, lonely, when they get into the relationship with a man that's unhealed, they just continue to trauma bond. Trauma bond.
Wow.
Trauma bond. Trauma bond. So you're mad at an unhealed man, but you keep choosing the unhealed man because you yourself haven't been able to identify that you're unhealed. But when you start to become healed, and I'm talking to someone on here, when you become healed, you no longer take it personally when an unhealed man says, I like you, but I really don't think that we should date. And you don't take it as rejection.
Wow.
Right? When he says something like, I'm not ready, you don't take it as, well, oh, he's rejecting me. No, he's not ready. He's protecting you. Right? And so I had to become healed so that I can be able to finally break free from trauma bonding.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And so now when you're able to do that, now God allows you to align with the person that can now complement where you are in your healing journey. That's why it's no longer a burden, but a blessing for me at this point.
I love it.
Because I need you to reject me because you're not God's best for me.
Ooh.
Because you're not healed yet, and I'm healed. So we're continual creatures of healing.
Wow. So there's no longer bitterness when a
No.
guy rejects you, whatever.
No.
You know, because that's the norm. You know,
No,
you
it's
you
no
reject me. Who do
longer.
you think you are? You know what you get in, and so forth. It's your loss and so forth. You're actually saying it's the will of God.
Protection.
It's God protecting you. Wow.
Pop the red balloon. Bloop.
Oh, we popping balloons.
I don't know if y'all ever
Pop the
seen the
red
pop the
balloon.
balloon
Oh,
thing,
yes,
But there was
yes,
an
it's
episode recently.
disrespectful.
No, there was an episode recently of a gentleman that came and he was interviewing and the woman said, "Well, she was interviewing it was the other way around. The gentleman was looking for a mate, and one of the young ladies said, sorry, let me get it right. It's the other way around. There was a young woman that was interviewing men on the show with red balloons. And if a person didn't like what they had to say to pop the balloon. So she said, well, I'm a woman of God. I'm looking for a godly relationship. Bloop, 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 bloop.
Oh, really?
Bloop. And people said, well, why is she on that show if she's looking for a godly relationship? And I said, no, God spared her. God is protecting her. She told her standards. And if they don't want that, she should not see that as rejection.
That's good.
Not
God's protection.
Not a lot of women handle it that way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They don't interpret it as, God protecting them. They just straight up see it as rejection, and then they go in combat mode.
So, Ashaala, are you done with black men, or are you still? Is it still on the table, or I know the video was like, especially black men. Nah, but I was just curious, is that still on the table? Because I know there probably some brothers out there like, you know what, she didn't look at me yet, or I haven't showed up, or is it just now you opened up the window to more of the rainbow?
No, I'm not. I love black men.
Okay.
I'm just done with broken and unhealed black men that refuse to self-correct and get therapy.
Wow.
So for me, and here's the thing: I can't save a man, I can't heal a man, I can't fix a man, I can't do those things. I can pray for him, right? But no, I am black, blackity black, black on black on black. Black skin, so blackity black. Oh no, I love me a black king.
There's a saying that says, once you go black,
don't. You never.
However, the question did come up
Yes.
that if there was another ethnicity or another race, would I reject? And I said no if it's God's will for me.
Okay.
Oh Lord,
Put it out there.
No.
Put it out there.
Let me take you out of that water.
If you're listening, if you're watching, vocal coach.
oh my.
Talking about boys, but you talked as well about investing in the places where you want to see growth and investing in yourself. So for women who are in that space, right,
Yeah.
and they're listening to you like, oh my gosh, like that's the dream life, but how do I get there? Like, where do they need to start? Like, what's the next best step for them?
Yeah, mentorship. And I said that, like I had invested in every other aspect of my life to scale and to grow, but I'd never invested. I'm talking like sowing a seed and honoring financially. And I just believe in the law of reaping and sowing, not just in your words, but also with your resources, right? And so because of that, God was like, no, it's time for you to sow here and learn here, like become a student here. And so I've started having coaching from a woman of God who went through a triathlon in her marriage. Wow. Like her husband had left for 8 years, was with a whole nother woman. And she stayed at the feet of God and honored her husband until he came back home.
What?
Okay. So if there's anybody that's going to tell me about how to run a marathon in marriage, I'd rather hear it from that person.
Wow.
And how I know is because she was one of my prayer partners.
She waited for how long?
8 years.
Not 8 days, 8 years.
For him to
Not
come,
8 months.
to come
not
back home.
8 years.
And he came back home?
And he came back
Maybe
home.
she thought he died.
No.
And she opened the door?
She saw him with the other woman. The other woman. No.
And she opened the door?
She opened the door because it was bigger than her.
That was her
And
assignment.
now
He had a whole other family.
they are doing marriage ministry together, sharing the real, because there's a lot of men and women in the church
Yes, ma'am.
who may not physically drift, but they are already emotionally tapped out. They are just roommates in the house, and they come to the faith center and they pretend.
Yeesh.
So because of that, it wasn't just the emotional, it was the physical. So because of that, I said, if there's anyone that I'm going to learn from, because I saw her go through it.
Wow.
And I honored her through it. And I made sure that I wasn't familiar with even the moments of her that were human. And I said, I need to sit at your feet and learn.
We need
This level of tenacity.
we need to get her on the
I was
podcast.
gonna-
Absolutely.
We need to get her on the
Absolutely.
podcast.
I will make sure I make that
Because
connection.
we need to know.
8
We need to
years.
know.
Yeah, she had
8
an
years.
assignment, boy.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
And now her ministry is towards the mistresses.
Ooh,
Oh, to who?
What?
Towards the mistresses.
wow. No, we
Oh.
need to get her on the
Side
next
piece.
podcast.
Piece, not the
Is who
main.
God now is now using her
not
to
the
restore.
main dish. What?
Oh, Jesus.
Come on, sis.
Yeah,
Come
bring her on.
sis.
Y'all wanted a podcast
Yes,
today.
we need to talk to her.
That's heavy right now.
Saving the side chick.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah, we
my-
saving the side chick.
Let's go. Side chicks
Side
need
chick
saving
ministry.
too.
Side chicks need saving too.
Hashtag.
This is gonna go viral.
If you are a side chick, do not put it in the chat right now. No side chicks. Don't sound off
Oh, God.
in the chat.
Listen, if you are a side chick right now, text the word save. I don't know what the number is here.
HFM, no.
Text it.
But text the word save.
Come
We
on,
got
come
you.
on, somebody. We got you.
Oh, Jesus.
Wow.
A handout for you.
I think we're about to wrap up. Oh, my goodness.
Mistress
so
Ministry.
good.
But last word here. What would you say to women out there
Yeah.
who they've listened to you, listened to this podcast? Yeah, you know, we had some funny moments and, of course, some very intense moments, but they're still saying, Shayla, you just don't understand the weight, man. It's, you know, it's, this burden is too much.
Yeah.
I have had multiple failed relationships
Yeah.
because I gave hope that this was the guy. Turned out not to, or the girl,
Yeah.
not just men, women alone. And I've done my part. I'm a Christian. I want to remain faithful to God. But it's just hard. And sometimes I don't think that God is rewarding me with the desires of my heart. So it's depressing to be a Christian when I see my friends out there doing certain things and it looks like they're having fun and I'm wondering if I'm making a mistake by
Yeah.
waiting.
Okay, so that's a real question because I am her. I was her. I still do go through that. So it's not like I've just overcome things. I want to be real with you all. But like I said, what I do, okay, ladies, gentlemen, is I become proactive in the areas of my life where I know God is still working on me with. So I surround myself with a support group. I seek therapy, because sometimes you'll find that the levels of your loneliness and things like that has a lot to do with making sure that you can heal from certain things first. Like the little girl in you or the little boy in you is not looking for something else. So therapy is important so you can navigate through that. Be with friends that will be able to support you and start to sit at the feet of married people. Because, you know, I realized that I needed to sit more with married people so I can understand what the entity of marriage looks like, the good, the bad, the indifferent, and also get like advice from them as I'm waiting. So you have to become proactive in the wait process. Therapy, support group, community, accountability, okay, and making sure that you have mentorship in those areas. There is no pill to take. There is no drink to drink. I wish I can tell you something that will appease the idols of your heart right now, but I'm telling you something that is realistic. The only way that you're going to know how to navigate through the weight of the wait is you have to be proactive in that. And sometimes waiting, because I wrote it down, the wait, I put, it can either be a burden or it could be responsibility, right? Depending on how you see it. Wow. And then the wait, W-A-I-T, can either be to serve during that time, to rest during that time, or just to pause for a moment to see what God is saying. So you have to determine the W-E-I-G-H-T. Is it a burden for you, or what is your responsibility in this season?
That's good.
As you serve, as you rest, as you pause, right? And that's what I would say.
Shayla, you are amazing today.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you
for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I really do believe all of our viewers were tremendously blessed because you gave them answers, you gave them hope, and I think for those, especially women, who were living with this panic attack, you know, anxiety, you gave them hope today. Again, Carlene and Frederick, thank you so much for being with me today. Now, listen, guys, the goal and purpose for our podcast is to give you hope. There is no doubt in my mind that today you had an opportunity to hear from Ashaala with our own testimony. When she said, I am that woman, you know, she's not telling you something that she did not live, and perhaps going through some of those experiences today. So if you're a single man, single woman, I know the weight is there. You know, you're hoping by now that you should have, you know, fit in somehow in the narrative of society of what a successful man or woman is. Just go to the Bible, man. Go to God, you know, and he'll tell you that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, that you're the apple of his eye. And whoever you are doesn't hang on your connection with an individual. In fact, it only amplifies that person. You're an asset to somebody. So I hope you see it that way. Please give us your comments. We need to hear from you, man. If today a podcast blessed you, something Ashaala said, Carleen, Frederick, myself, even if you disagree, you know, at least in the virtual world, I want you to just tell us how you feel. How do you feel about Christians and IVF? Tell us what you think about when Ashaala mentioned, you know, that, you know, she's not settling, you know, and so forth. We need to hear from you. Spread the message and forward this podcast to as many people as you can. In other words, when you get it, there's a way that you can send it to somebody and let them know about the podcast. Thank you so much. Don't forget to donate. We can't do this, man, without you. There are many men and women behind the scene who make this possible. You don't get to see them. We're the ones on the set. We're the ones that are in front of the cameras. But there are many people behind the scene who do this for a living. Help me to make sure I take care of them and also make sure I take care of ministry on a whole. So the information is there on your screen. Please support our ministry. And once again, thank you so much, and I'll see you. We will see you on the next podcast.